Powered by the Monroe County Reporters. Here are your hosts, Jason Harwood and Jacob Litton.
All right, welcome to another episode of Talking Grit. I'm Jason Harwood, and with me is competitive flag footballer Jacob Litton. How are you doing today?
I am fantastic. You've been waiting, since Monday night to say that?
I'm going to continue saying it because
that's fine. You say that.
It's ridiculous. I want to know what your idea of competitive flag football. You didn't get to talk about it on the show on Monday. Jeremy and Ryan just cut you off. We want to know your history. So tell me when you played.
It wasn't relevant to go any further, but I just wanted to know that I have experience in that.
Yeah, no.
I'll send you the videos. I'll send you the links. I've got pictures.
Right.
I got videos.
How old were you when you did it?
Last time I played, I think it's been like 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay. All right.
It's awesome. I mean, that when I played, it was a contact league. So there's blocking and there,
okay.
You're playing on the defensive line or offensive line. You're getting busted up, basically.
Wow. Okay. That's a little
No, it was fun. It's close to football. I mean, you're not tackling, but you're still physical.
All right.
It's not how you're picturing. It's not what the Olympics are going to look like at all.
Okay. I just wanted to throw it out there. You could call me competitive cornholer if you'd like. I did rejoin my league this summer, so I am going to be playing in a league again. So we'll wait till that's an Olympic sport. Cornhole, you think it's coming? It's got to come, right?
They make anything an Olympic sport these days, right?
Exactly.
Breakdancing.
Yeah, that's an Olympic sport. We saw some when we were in Toronto. Brought the boys to the Blue Jays game, and the Canadian Olympic team was out front teaching kids and stuff like that. It was pretty cool.
That actually is cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was like the Sunday Kids Day. Toronto did it right. Super impressed. If you're ever up in Toronto, Sunday Kids Day, they have all sorts of cool stuff. It was awesome.
Nice.
All right. So before we get started with our show here, I just want to say hi and welcome to all the new listeners. Since we've been on the POD podcast on Monday, we've had a very good response. So if you're new to the show, listening, thank you for joining us. If you've been with us along the way, also thank you because you give us the energy and the want to do this each and every week. We have so much fun. So I do want to reiterate that we appreciate you guys listening. You could find us on @TalkingGritPod on Twitter. Message us. Got a good question you want to first show? Drop it. Jacob and I will always get to it. It frankly helps us create content, and it's fun to help out a listener and gives us a different angle on how to talk about stuff. So we do appreciate that. You can also reach us. What'd you say?
I said absolutely.
Yeah. You can reach us on YouTube channel.
Forgive me for talking once, Jason.
Yeah, that's it. Once I get going, you gotta shut up.
As soon as I tried, every time I try to add something, it just keeps going on.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What did you say?"
Yeah, that's right.
And we're live, so this will be cut on the actual episode. It'll just cut my voice out completely.
Yep.
Sorry, carry on.
All right. So we have a great show for you today. Unfortunately, Jacob is here. We'll have to let him speak. But anyways, the coordinators, new coaches spoke to the media. We didn't really get to that last week because of the schedule release. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The players also met, including Hutch, who all eyes are on Hutch, right? So we want to see how he's doing. The OTAs are here, present right now. Now the media doesn't have access, so we have very limited information, but fortunately, there's some Twitter pictures out there. Lions have been releasing stuff, so we'll go into that, and then we're going to end on this special time that we have going on in Detroit sports. And I just want to hit on what I'm feeling, what Jacob's feeling, the buzz around the city. We just need to talk about it, so we're going to get to that. Before we get to any of that stuff that we mentioned, there was a roster move this week. The Lions signed former second-round pick Zach Cunningham, linebacker, and then we released Abraham Beauplan. Any thoughts on that roster move at all, Jacob?
This would be much bigger news a few seasons ago, right? Mm-hmm. So Zach Cunningham right now is veteran. He's played in over 100 games in his career. He led the NFL in tackles in 2020, and he was once one of the highest paid linebackers in the NFL. So this is a veteran guy that's seen the top of it, but the fall off. I mean, he got benched a few times in Houston. He got cut. He's bounced around the last few years. Titans, Eagles. He played for the Broncos last year. It was mostly on special teams. So, I'm looking. This is a veteran depth piece. Nothing is being promised to Zach Cunningham, of course. And his best years are behind him. So I think right now it's just a chance to compete for a roster spot, another veteran presence. And, he's taking the place of Abraham Beauplan, who really was a practice squad player. He did play in a few games for us last year, but, it would have been a very long shot for Beauplan to make the team anyway.
Yeah, Zach Cunningham is more your middle linebacker type, which, maybe just that's the reason why he's on the team. This is, the last linebacker on our squad right now. So the headlines read former second round pick. That's just good to get you to click. He's not that player anymore. So if you're expecting big things, probably going to be disappointed. If he's in our lineup, there's one of two things. We've gotten a lot of injuries along the way, or somehow Zach Cunningham found the fountain of youth and is going to, bring back his old play. Neither is likely.
Wild. No.
Exactly.
I mean, don't expect the 170 tackles this season, Zach Cunningham. I think he'd be closer to the 50 snaps he played last year, Zach Cunningham, if he makes the team.
Exactly. So this is the kind of the bottom of the roster churn that happens this time of year. And sometimes it's just a matter of getting a player that's on the field. And this is a veteran player. Maybe it's in response to Alex not being out there right now. I don't know. I don't.
Do you really? I mean, that's one angle of looking at it, but do you feel that way at all? In all honesty, no, right? I mean,
no. I don't know. I mean, I maybe they just want to get a look at him just for down the road too. Say if the crap hits the fan and
right.
need someone, but no, I don't really expect anything to come of this at all.
Yeah,
this is just,
you're not going to give a green dot to Zach Cunningham and do anything
no,
right.
No, if we do that, we're in trouble. That means both Alex and Jack and probably Barnes is out, and probably Malcolm too. Because
quit talking about it. It happened before.
Yeah, I know exactly. So, that's all we really need to talk about. That. Let's get to some coordinator talk here. We heard from the head court, the offense, the OC, and the DC. But I want to start out with talking about the people under them, the positional coaches. Who I know you listened to it, Jacob. Who did you enjoy listening to the most out of? I'm not talking about Johnny Morton or Shep. The others that spoke. Was there anyone that spoke to you that just stood out?
I did like the defensive back. Is it Deshae Townsend? Am I saying that's his name? Right. Yeah. So it was cool, hearing what he had to say, but he also kind of there was no smoke screen or there was nothing, he laid it out. This is what our intent is with pretty much everybody on the roster. And this is what we have right now. So that was also cool. We didn't leave too much up to interpretation or whatever. He said, this is where it stands. This is what we're dealing with. And, which is being honest, right? I mean, there's not a whole lot of uncertainties back there.
No. When we talk about where people stand, the safeties coach, Jim O'Neill, talked and, kind of laid out Avonte Maddox. They look at him as nickel and safety. So there was big talk about where, we talked about it. Where is he going to line up? And like you said with Deshae Townsend, it's like, here it is. This is the plan. And we're like, okay, well, that's clear cut.
Thanks for cleaning that up for us. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no guesswork anymore. We kind of know. I mean, obviously things could change, right? There could be an injury. They could put him there and it just doesn't work out. Something like that. I mean, things could move, but the initial plan is, nickel and safety, which is fine with me because I think the days of him being an outside corner are probably limited in this league.
But I think he mentioned I could be wrong because it's been a few weeks, but didn't he mention iffy when he was talking about Avonte Maddox? That was kind of, we lost Melifonwu. This is where, we're kind of looking right now to fill that role.
Exactly. So, it was nice to see Hank Fraley talk. I really like David Shaw. Probably my favorite listen out of all these coordinators is always Scotty Montgomery. That dude is up there with Shep as far as for me listening and just being enthralled with anything that guy has to say. I am really encouraged that he's on a wide receiver coach. I really looked up to him as a running backs coach. He's going to be a future head coach at some point. I mean, he's got to probably get an OC job first, but at some point, he just seems head coaching material, especially if AG succeeds. He just like they're gonna want it. Everyone's gonna want to copy it. Especially if AG succeeds, everyone's gonna be like, we want the Dan, and anybody in Dan Campbell's coaching tree, we're
Right.
gonna want that. So I think Scotty Montgomery is definitely on that list. I am encouraged that he said that he's more comfortable at the wide receiver coach position than he has been at the running backs. If you're not aware, Scotty Montgomery's still with the team, but now he's coaching wide receivers instead of running backs, and that's nice. The pairing with him with JMO, it's gonna be another voice with JMO, and I'm curious how that's all gonna play out.
Right. I mean, I think that if I'm not wrong, Scotty Montgomery was a wide receiver when he played, right?
Yes.
Or he's
Yep.
definitely had way more experience with the wide receivers. But I mean,
That's
he's been
correct.
most of the time in the NFL has been as a running backs coach. He's still got the assistant head coach position as well. But I don't think much is going to change. He's really well respected in the building. Like you said, you can tell when he talks, he's definitely on that trajectory towards the head coaching position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like first time we got to hear Tashard Choice talk, or at least that I can remember, and him and he talking about he might throw fists with Shep or something to that effect. That was awesome. We got a Deuce Staley AG type situation going on. I can't wait to go to training camp with you and hear them screaming at each other. That'll be great.
Yeah, for sure. Must see TV, right?
Yeah.
This is Tashard Choice's first coaching experience in the NFL. So, I mean, from a coaching standpoint, we'll see exactly what he brings to the table and how the season goes. But for your first gig, and you've got David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs as your best players, I think that you got it. It doesn't get much easier than that, right?
Yeah. He says he wants to be judged on how Sione Vaki and Craig Reynolds do.
Well
he
said.
wants, and that's, that's great. That's what you want to hear. He has a history with, it's been well publicized that, he with Jahmyr Gibbs, and, I'm sure that had some reason for him to be here, but I think it's more to do with Shep, that it just lined up that, we're going to move Scotty over to wide receivers coach because Antoine Randall L went over to the dark side with Ben Johnson, and they moved Scotty over, and then we had a running backs coach, and in true Dan Campbell fashion, he just gets another awesome coach to come in here.
Hey, people want to be here, right?
They do. Another guy I was really impressed with is the new tight end coach, Tyler Roll. Talked about, he interviewed a couple years ago, didn't get the job. He just ran into Dan Campbell, and I don't know if it was at Senior Bowl or something like that, and just said, I really respect your opening press conference because that's how I see the game. And I think just people just enjoy the raw emotion from Dan Campbell, and football people get it, what he was talking about. Teddy Bruschi thinks he's a meathead, so he doesn't get it, but everyone else gets it that this guy's not a meathead. The national media, they don't get it yet. They see him going for it on fourth down. They think the meathead moniker is still there, and that's fine. Let him underestimate Dan Campbell, because Dan Campbell knows how to deal with people, and he just keeps finding all these coaches that are great coaches, great people,
making the team better.
Yeah,
I still don't know that Teddy Bruschi really believes that. That had to just be clickbait or him trying to have his moment on TV. Like, you're sounding stupid right now.
Hey, exactly. I don't get it. Another guy I liked listened to because I was excited that he was coming here was David Shaw, former head coach of Stanford. He came out in his interview. The interesting thing that he said in his interview is that he, on average, turned down 3 interviews per year to go to the NFL, and it just shows how well respected and how wanted he is around the league. Maybe the 3 interviews weren't for NFL only. It was kind of ambiguous. So maybe it was just 3 interviews. He could have went to a different college, but on average, 3 interviews a year, he turned them down. I think number one, that shows that, hey, he signed with Stanford. He's going to stay there until the job's finished, until he's done. And I like that kind of respect. He has a very good relationship with Johnny Morton, our new OC, And that is probably the primary reason that Dan Campbell was able to get him.
Right. Yeah, I mean for me at least, like that came out of nowhere. David Shaw, somebody that's really well respected, really popular. He's, a veteran coach. He's been around for a long time. I did not see that coming. So, in my opinion, that was a huge get for us.
Yes. Yeah. And, you got a new OC. I know he's coming in with all these weapons, Johnny Morton. He's coming in with all these weapons. He's familiar with our system because he helped implement it 2 years ago. But what better sounding board to have than a good friend and a very smart football mind than David Shaw right there that you could bounce off ideas with and feel comfortable with. I mean, he'll come right in and be able to do that. So it just seems to keep lining up, with our coaches. We lose coaches, but then we just replace them with really, really good coaches.
Right. I mean, you want, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So we're hoping that our offense stays. Well, losing your offensive coordinator is huge. Very important that you get the right people in here and you get them in here quickly. And I feel like we did that.
Yep. Speaking of losing good coaches, Terrell Williams went to the Patriots, was our defensive line coach, regarded as one of the top 2 defensive line coaches in the league. Gets defensive coordinator under variable over at the Patriots. But who do the Lions get? Casey Rogers, who is, if not number 1, number 2. So we replaced one defensive line coach with another top defensive line coach. And I mean, how excited is this guy to be working with Hutch, right?
Yeah, right. Same thing. Like it, makes your job easier, more exciting when you don't have the odds stacked against you already.
Mm-hmm.
Like you already have a step ahead.
Were you surprised? I mean, he left Todd Bowles. I mean, he has been with Todd Bowles year in, year out, different teams, followed him all around, and then he left to come to the Lions. Were you? I mean, are you surprised by that?
In the same position, the same defensive line coach and run game coordinator, same thing he was doing in Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, right? You would have to be surprised. Like, what reason did you really have? Is he mad about because the Buccaneers had the whole defensive coordinator thing, right? Where he didn't get the defensive coordinator job, or there was something to that.
Yeah, that'll be a great question. That'll be a great question for Tampa Tones when we have him on. That'd be something I want to know. I mean, I emailed or I DM'd him or something after this happened and just wanted a little bit of information on, Casey Rogers in Tampa. Said you're going to love him, and so far, you haven't seen any results on the field or anything like that, obviously, but just having him up there, the way the other coaches talk about him, the way Dan Campbell talks about him, yeah, couldn't be more happy with that decision right now.
Yeah, I was just looking to make sure. It looks like Larry Foote and Casey Rogers are listed as co-defensive coordinators. Neither of them have that official title.
Okay.
Last year. So I guess Todd Bowles was also he was his own defensive coordinator.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's more to that. Maybe he's just, fresh start. He's been underneath Todd Bowles for so long. Maybe he feels like he needs to cut the leash and just see what he's got and, have better opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it worked out great for us. Maybe it was money. I mean,
it could be. And that very well could be because Sheila's been, whatever Dan needs, Sheila's open up her pocketbook. We don't know what these coordinators are paid. We know a couple years ago that Ben Johnson was given a bag, and I'm assuming that when he came back, he was given a bigger bag, and I think AG got the same thing. Whatever Dan and Brad think they need for the team, Sheila's been on board with. One thing that I want to go back to is Jim O'Neill, the assistant, defensive assistant. He's a safeties coach. Do you remember the conversation about Branch's aggressiveness and what they were doing in practice with him? They bought him that special bag, and they were going to see if Branch put a bag in it, and they were basically measuring on targeting where to target, the wide receiver, running back, whoever that he's hitting, so that we can so he could save Branch some money.
Yeah, nice.
So I remember that. I did
save him the ejection.
Yeah, exactly. In the second quarter of the Packers game.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
BS.
Yeah, exactly. Double bird BS. Mike Brunell talked a little bit about the Kyle Allen, Hendon Hooker situation. Didn't really get too much information other than, they're both vying for the second string quarterback position. It's wide open. I don't know if they're just saying that and Hendon's got the heavy lead. I'm not
I
sure.
know we're going to talk about OTAs later, but some of the pictures that you see in OTAs, Kyle Allen's one throwing the ball. So I don't know, not entirely sure what that means because we're not in there, but sometimes a picture speaks 1,000 words, but sometimes it can be deceiving.
Yeah, Jeremy Reisman over at Prior Detroit had those stills, and he wrote he said, "I'm incredibly bored. I'm writing an article on stills on 5 observations from stills," and he had zoomed in and all sorts of stuff.
Right?
You
gotta do what you can, right?
When the content well runs dry, we all work really hard. All right, my question to you, Jacob. We just talked about all these coaches. Will the well ever run dry for Dan Campbell? Will there be a time where he's really struggling to find coaches that want to come here?
It doesn't look that way, does it?
No.
It's hard picturing now what, the end of the line is going to look like for Dan Campbell in Detroit because of, how things are going, the trajectory that we're on right now. Not that I want to think about what it's going to be like anyway, but I just don't see that happening anytime soon. We've got the right coaching staff. We've got the right roster. We've got the right, the right people around. And if every time we lose the coordinators and lose coaches, we replace them with, equal talent, then, hypothetically, right, you got about a decade or so of good football.
Yes. Well, I also think that you're promoting with them. We've already promoted some guys, moved some guys around. Other guys are getting job elsewhere, obviously. And so people are going to want to come here because they're going to want that opportunity. And so that's, you're going to keep getting good coaches, people that want to move up. Dan Campbell is not afraid to promote people or, prepare them for another team's job. He's just not. We're not going to just let people go. But Kelvin Shepard, if he has a couple good years as defensive coordinator, he may be out because he definitely has head coach written all over him. The Lions win a Super Bowl, teams start poaching people. They want the next young coach, and and the way Kelvin Shepard talks, let's move to Kelvin Shepard right now.
Right.
So we've talked about all the assistant defensive and offensive coaches. Kelvin Shepard, we'll start with him. I'm going to ask you a question. What do you want to see different on this defense this year, if anything?
So the only thing that I can think of that I want to be different is I would like, and Shep, as a linebackers coach and everything, I want the linebackers to crash down more on the line. I would like the linebackers to get more pressure, more tackles for loss, plug up the running lanes, get some pressure up the middle sometimes, just crash down more than we drop back. And, that's the defense that we played. They dropped a little bit more. If they're running, we had a great run defense with our line anyway. We're slowing them down. The linebackers are able to get in there. But, there's just a couple plays I can think of where Anzalone, blitz up the middle and it just disrupts the play right away. It just didn't happen frequently enough. I didn't think that we sent them or crashed them down on the line enough. That's really the only thing I could think of that I would like if it happened a little bit more. Where's your head at, though? Like, how do you...
That's exactly what I was going to say. More pressure from the linebackers. Dial it up a little bit differently. Figure out how you want your defensive line play. Create those holes. Send the linebackers. Some of it's going to be the right players. I don't know if we, having, Barnes back.
Yes.
Could make a big difference. If Barnes he has not shown his ability to rush the passer consistently in this league. Now we only got a little bit last year, and last year looked like he was going to be on a good trajectory. He's a good defender. They could play that unique position, the same position the Lions use. We need to just generate some additional pass rush outside of the edge. If you look at the top defenses like the Broncos, the Ravens, these top teams that get the most sacks, it's their linebackers that are leading their team in sacks. Now we have all world Hutch, right? So he's going to get his. But if we could generate, if we want our other edge to just crash down and hold the edge, we could generate pass rush other ways. Like if Pascal's on the outside, say Davenport gets hurt, we got to put Pascal on the outside and he just holds that edge. Where else are we going to get that pass rush? Another option is Branch. Develop that part of Branch's game. Is he going to be playing down more in the box? I know he's safety. Nickel, he's more close to the line. They could have him blitz, but you know, everything considered, they want him more at safety than they do, you know, than they do at nickel. But I would like to see different blitz packages than we've seen before, and hopefully we can get those guys home. That's what I want to see.
Yes. And, you know, ideally with a healthy defense, your best players, you're able to do more things like that.
Exactly. I mean, that's going to be, you know, Hutch is going to command a lot of attention, and you run stunts or something like that, all the attention is going to go to Hutch. Someone else is going to be able to pick up, you know, come make a free runner, you know, and then that'll be a solution to, you know, getting pressure on the quarterback. The thing that I like, and I think that what Shep talks about, is that he likes to teach everybody every part of the defense so that, you know, the linebackers know what the guys in front are going to do. They know what the guys behind them are going to do. Everyone knows what everybody else's job is and why they're doing that. And that just allows the player to play faster and know where the other guys are going to do it, why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that, you know, they always talk about, we want our guys to not think out there, to play faster. So if everyone understands everybody else's job, they can play faster, and that could make a difference. You know, giving the quarterback a tenth of a second less to pass, right? I mean, those all make differences in the game.
Well, everybody's on the same page. Nobody gets lost. I mean, how many big plays happen because there's some sort of miscommunication on the defense or somebody's out of position, or, you know, that's the main thing that you got to work on. So if everybody's learning every aspect and everyone's, you know, doing the same thing, essentially, then you're going to cut down on those big plays.
Exactly.
Do your job.
Yep. Do your job and trust the guy next to you that he's going to do his job. And
Right.
when you get out of position because you don't trust that guy next to you, that's where it all falls apart, you know, because then the guy next to that guy is out of position because, you know, and then all of a sudden 2 or 3 guys out of position, it's bad news. Let's do the same thing. Johnny Moore, new offensive coordinator, talked about, I'm not going to, why would I change anything? This is a top offense in the league. You know, he may change small things here or there, but I'm going to ask you, Jacob, if you were running this thing, what would you like to see different, if anything?
So what I want to see different is actually what I feel like he's going to change or what's going to happen differently too, because I want more targets and touches for Jameson Williams. Okay. You know, I think that 10 would be the number, 10 targets / touches for JMO. 6 games last year, he got 5 or less touches. You know, maybe there was one game he had 1 target the whole game. A couple where he had like 2 or 3 targets. Maybe I think like 4 targets for 3 catches, and then he had 1 handoff. That's not enough for a player of that caliber to be able to get it. And when Morton was talking just about Jameson Williams, said he's been unbelievable in the meetings, the attention to detail. He said he was excited to see him, and he said it's going to be a breakout year for him. He's like, I just can't wait, man. Me either. Unleash this man. Fully he got 1,000 yards last year, and it didn't feel like it. Right? I mean, he had the big plays and everything, but it didn't feel like 1,000-yard season. He had, was it like 58 catches or something like that? You know, I mean, so for him to have a breakout season and do even better than that would be insane. But I do think they're going to be targeting and trying to utilize him more.
Yeah, I'm curious how that's all going to shake out with JMO. Are we talking deep shots? Or, his route tree has drastically expanded in the last couple of years. You can run more things with him. Are we going to be utilizing the deep passing game more, or are we going to get him underneath shots and just hopefully he could take the distance with his speed?
Right.
Whatever, just create the guy's space and let him go. I am so stoked when he said this is going to be a breakout season for JMO, who just had 1,000-yard season. And it's not. Scotty Montgomery also talked very glowingly about Jamison Williams. It sounds like in the meeting room, he is very cognizant, just it sounds like he's just matured a lot more again, right? He's gotten another year older, and yeah, I mean, he's going to put a if he has another breakout season, it's going to make a very tough decision for Brad Holmes the next year.
Yes,
And
you are correct.
And that, I mean, would you want it any other way? Do you want him to have a crappy season so it's easy to say goodbye? No.
Yeah,
make it,
right.
Make
No,
it
no,
really,
no.
really tough. Nonetheless, you up his trade value if you decide you're not going to be able to pay him. Get a first round for him.
Right.
I'm not saying I want to trade JMO, but at some point,
I mean, that's kind of a scenario that you have to think about. It's
Yeah.
a likely scenario if that's how it plays out.
right? Because how are you going to afford to pay him 30 million? Say he goes for 1,400 yards this year, 1,400 yards, and 8-9 touchdowns or more. It's going to be he's going to
And he sees how much Shamar Chase is making and other, I mean,
yeah, it's going to be tough. What about I'm with you on that. I also just think at some point, especially with us playing outside a lot this year, I just want to see the run game just dominate even more than it has in the past, and just lean on it. And I don't like necessarily going, okay, this team has a really good run defense. We're going to just run it regardless. If they have a weak passing defense, of course, you want to take advantage of that. But at the same time, if your identity is the offensive line, you just shove it. I like to just, impose our will on someone, as they say, and just shove it down their throat and say, try to stop this. I don't like to want to be stubborn about it, but when you have Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, if they're both healthy, sometimes I just want to see them dominate a game.
I mean, you keep wearing them down, and they're going to start breaking them off, and then they're getting 4 or 5, 6 yards of carry, and it's inevitable that they're going to break one off.
Yes.
But we have had some times where it's like maybe we're doing pretty good, but then we shy away, and then there's times where there's 2 or 3 drives in a row, and then all of a sudden we've only ran the ball twice in those 3 drives. Like that's we shouldn't be doing that.
The Bears Thanksgiving game comes to mind. Dominating that game first half, running the ball. Jahmyr Gibbs has that long run, fumbles right before half, right? Could have just really put it away, but then didn't rush much in the mostly due to circumstance, but sometimes you just got to create the circumstance and go with it. And I know we could talk about the trick plays because this kind of goes with it. Do you want to see the same amount of trick plays as we saw with Ben Johnson? Do you think that's a Ben Johnson thing or a Dan Campbell thing? What's your feeling on that?
I guess we'll find out this year whether it was a Ben Johnson or Dan Campbell thing. We'll see what the Bears are trying to do and what we do.
Right.
I like the trick plays most of the time. I feel like for most of the season, we're pretty smart about when we did the trick plays, and they, I think that's what helped them work. And, the league likes it. The fans like it. The players seem to like it too when the trick plays work like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things. It's fun and it's great when it works, but then when it doesn't work, it's like, why would you try that there? What the heck were we doing? And Jamison Williams throwing an interception, that. For how many, I don't have the count in front of me, but for how many trick plays we did, more often than not, they worked. But when they didn't work, they were really bad, really inopportune times, it felt like.
Yeah.
And maybe it was just because they didn't work, but the total number of trick plays I'm okay with. In my head, I don't feel like we're going to see as many this year. I do feel like that was more Ben Johnson. How do you feel, though?
Yeah, I think that was more Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell being okay with it. But at some point, when your offense is as good as the Lions, do we need to run as many? I mean, right. I know I want to keep the players happy and all that, but scoring touchdowns will keep the players happy. Don't turning the ball over. And I guess I'm probably a little more conservative about that. I love the trick plays. Don't get me wrong. I love, stumble bum, Amon-Ra, throwing to Jared Goff. Great plays. It gives the defense something to think about. Correct. They, if they see the hook and ladder play enough, it's not just a once at a great, they did that thing like what, 3-4 times last season. You have to be able to practice and defend against that. And when you're practicing and defending against a trick play, that's other plays that you're taking time away, limited time away from practicing something else. Third down plays, fourth down plays, that type of situation. So, it's easy to speak against the trick plays, especially when they don't work. It's like, well, why'd you run that? But say that JMO play turned into a touchdown instead of interception. Brent Johnson's a genius. It
Right,
just,
right. See, then it's brilliant, but because it didn't work, it's like that was terrible.
Yeah.
Why did we do that there?
Mm-hmm. So there's a time and a place. We'll see. I don't feel like Johnny Moore just talking to him, that's going to be his thing. Going with his matrix play. So I think it's gonna, curtail. But if I'm around, JMO come to him and say this hook and ladder, or Gibbs comes to him and they talk about the hook and ladder play, they'll run it. I don't think Johnny Moore. It's worked in the past. Why? I mean, they haven't. No one's been able to stop that play yet.
Right.
No one's, and maybe with an off season, teams will figure out a way to do it. But it just, with the momentum and the speed of those players that are involved with that, the amount of attention Amon-Ra commands, and then Gibbs and JMO running the opposite way at full speed by the time they get the ball, it just seems like impossible to stop. So it'll be interesting. But the first time we fumble it or give it up, oh man, it's not gonna be a good look.
Right.
Why were you
Same
doing
thing.
that? But anything else that you want to see different, or with the offense or defense, or you want to move on?
No, I will say something that Shep said that made me feel better was when he was talking about Marcus Davenport.
Okay.
So, they had kind of asked him about that, and he said, he's been here and I've seen him before. The only obstacle for Davenport is his health. Said it's never been about his play. It's always been about the availability, which is something that we kind of knew for the most part, but we haven't really gotten to see. Did he have 2 games, or was it 1 game last year? Or it's very short. I forget the
2.
number
It
now.
was like, well, he played the first. I think he sat out the second with a groin injury. Played the third game. Was that he got injured in the Arizona game? Was that game? That was game 4, I think. And yeah, or is that game? Yeah, I think that was
Arizona was game 3.
Game
Rams,
3. That's
Bucks, Cardinals.
Okay, so that's the game he was injured. So he basically played a game and a half.
Right. So, we haven't gotten it up close to see, but I mean, hearing that Shep feels that way about him and saying that, he's putting in the work, can tell like his body is different. He just is taking it seriously. He's been there just as much as the coaches have, I think is what he said. So that definitely makes me feel better about the edge situation. Like, at least Davenport is taking it seriously and he is giving it everything he's got. He understands the situation that he's in and the chance that he has here. So that made me feel better when Shep was talking about that.
It was encouraging. He said something like he's training to be ready in November and December and beyond, instead of just ready for the season. Some of that is off-season talk, right? It's like, spring training talk in baseball. Everyone's in their best shape of their life. But the Shep and the Lions, they don't talk about players like that unless they're really doing something. So I like that too, and most of that's just my hope that Davenport can play 8, 9, 10 games this season. I mean, I don't have any expectations of him playing a full season. If he does, amazing. But just based on his history, I don't expect that. But he could be a huge addition to the edge position. He's just, his size and speed and just what he can do is very unique and great for what the Lions want. He can crush that side of the pocket. The quarterback
would solve a lot of our problems if this guy could just stay healthy.
I know, exactly. The last coordinator we'll talk about a little bit is Dave Phipp. Always fun to listen to. The guy is just awesome. If you haven't listened to Dave Phipp, just turn on any one of his press conferences. He'll either have a really good story or, he's just great to listen to.
Definitely.
One thing that I took away from him is he's talked about being more aggressive on kickoffs. If you don't know, kickoff touchback is now with the 35 instead of the 30 next year. So when they asked if, expect a lot more kickoffs returned, and he said, drastically more.
Yes, it was one of those things where he said, you're kind of the first year. Obviously, the kickoff rules changed. It's brand new. They're kind of playing it safe. It seems like everybody's kind of playing it safe and just trying to feel things out as the season goes on. And it just, determined it was one of those things where, it's better just to boot it in the back and let them do whatever. And, now they're looking at certain situations. They're looking at, different numbers and where they're going to be at with it. And yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're going to be forcing them to try to return that ball this year.
Yeah, it's good. I want to see more kickoffs. I think I would have rather had it done a different way as opposed to putting the touchback all the way out to the 35. But I am excited about seeing more kickoffs return, and we'll see how it goes. I think you're going to see more squib kicks. He kind of alluded to, he didn't really say squib kicks, but what he talked about was that Jake Bates, our kicker, he had just finished UFL season, came straight to training camp, first NFL season. They were more worried about field goals than they were kickoffs. And so all of his, basically that's where he spent a lot of his time, but they had to be very wary of his legs. They can't just have him, just kicking a million kickoffs and wearing out his leg. They need him for the whole season. So I feel like he trained a lot more, and they're going to be a lot more. Can he consistently get the ball to touchdown? Because if you could get a touchback, like if it lands in the landing zone and goes to the end zone, they start out at the 20. I mean, that'd be a huge advantage if you could consistently get that down.
Right. Well, in the training camp that we went to, it was like Jake Bates kicked 100 field goals. Like that seemed like that was mostly just that's all he was doing is kicking field goals. He was kicking them so far he was hitting the roof of the the shed. And
Yes.
Then we actually did get to see them line up and do some kickoff stuff for the first time, which was really cool to be in and see that. But yeah, the kickoffs were all over the place. They were obviously playing around with the squib, and he was kicking like some knuckleballs and stuff like that. So, full year of working on that, hopefully, not worrying about the field goals as much, and we'll see what we get.
He kicked one of the ball and hit one of the kickoff team right in that back of the head. Remember that?
Yes.
Knocked him right down.
Right. I forgot about that. That was good.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Not only did the coaches speak, but some of the players spoke. We'll save Hutch for last here. Peneii Sewell come out and spoke. Do you remember what the big message was that Penei talked about?
I don't. What are you referring to here?
They asked him what he was going to work on, and he very scaringly said, getting stronger. And meanwhile, everybody else in the league goes, what?
Yeah.
He said, pushing big weights faster.
I like it.
I love it because, man, you gotta be scared as a linebacker. This guy coming, full steam and just ready to knock your head off. And if he's gonna be stronger, that's awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, he's already scary, right?
I know. I just like that he just wants to get better, and he's going to work on, certain things. And is he working on technique and all that stuff? I'm sure. But the fact that he just wants to knock someone's head off and be, stronger, pancake blocks, it's going to be awesome. DJ Reader also spoke. Very clear that he didn't want to get outside training because he did not want to lose, and he didn't want to pay for it because he goes, it's free at the Lions facility. It all because it's very important that it's very clear that money is important to DJ Reader. He's not going to pay for something that he can get free at the Lions facility. I'm sure he is taking advantage of all the food at the Lions thing. I'm not going out to lunch. I get free food here.
Why would you? That's all you need right there, right?
Exactly. He's not paying for outside training. He can get it all done at the Lions. Maybe he spends the night there too. Maybe he doesn't want to pay room and board anywhere. They might want to check the Meyer Performance Training Center. He might have a shack in there, just like, I'm not paying for rent. I can live here.
Sleeping bag right in the defensive line room.
Mm-hmm.
It's dark, quiet in there.
Yeah, but
fall asleep to highlights of you just crushing quarterbacks and
reminds me. I don't think you've probably seen this Seinfeld episode, but George Costanza once leaves his car because it's broken down or something at the stadium, and so they think that he's just working the whole time because his car is always there. That's what DJ Reader is. His car's always there, and they're like, "Man, he's the first one in. Does this guy ever leave? No, he's just there."
Hilarious.
Exactly. It is nice. I think DJ Reed is going to help Tyleek out, our new rookie. He has that kind of mentorship aspect to him, and he's going to be just a great sounding board for him. I'm glad they kept DJ Reader for another year. He may not have the impact in the passing game as we wanted last year, but remember, he was coming off an injury. This year, he's had a full off season, so we may be getting a better version of DJ Reader this year.
Right. No, I think so for sure. And, definitely with Tyleek, I think that, they asked him about Tyleek. He just said, it was apparent right away that Tyleek's pretty smart, understands the game, like his football IQ is really up there.
Yep. It's going to be a great pairing. And when we get a lean back, we'll see how that all matches out. But let's talk on Hutch. Okay. We've him hawed around about it. Let's talk about it. Yeah, he just kind of nonchalantly said he's fully cleared. Like, it wasn't at the beginning of the press conference. It was just kind of asked about it. And he's like, yeah, I'm fully cleared. I've been fully cleared for a little bit. Didn't know what to make about it, but OTAs pictures have come out, and yeah, I think he's good to go.
Yeah, I was not sure about OTAs because, knowing Hutch and knowing like his recovery, what he's been trying to do, then it's like, okay, I'm sure he definitely wants to be out there with the team. But if he is still dealing with the injury and, if doctors are telling him like, maybe you should take it easy or, let's do that, so was not sure that we were going to see him at OTAs, but you see the picture, you see him coming out with the leg sleeve. He's ready to go. Very encouraging.
Yep. I would love seeing the pictures. We can get to that in a little bit when we get to OTAs. The other thing that really stuck out to me that Hutch said was he had he does a lot of hospital work with kids. He goes and visits them in the hospital, and he talked about this was his first time in a hospital, and he said it was a miserable experience, and it gave him a different perspective on the kids that spend months in the hospital. And he was very careful to say, like, I know exactly what they're going through. He said it gives me a little taste of what they're going through. So he chose his words correctly.
Yeah.
But it was nice. And it does give you that realization that this has been a very healthy guy, not spend very much in and much time in the hospital. He hasn't missed much football, and they took it away from him. So you're going to come a super motivated Hutch that's ready to play football this year.
Yeah, that's hard to overcome mentally. So definitely, I mean, he seemed like he stayed on. I think it probably helped that the team was still playing well without him, just because then he was like, if they get to the Super Bowl, I'm playing. Like, that gave him something like, I've got to recover. I've got to do everything the right way, which, his motivation his drive is never in doubt, right? It wasn't like we were worried about him going to be getting fat, hanging out at home, not doing anything. Like, that was never the case. But I definitely think that it helps him stay motivated seeing the team.
I agree. Yeah. And yeah, Shep talked about, he knows Hutch is back because he goes around the hoop and touches the ground. And just seeing the pictures, that we saw this week of him getting out there. Yeah. The clickbait articles that were out about, his career being over. Obviously, clickbait articles. Let's before we move to OTAs, one thing that we talked about Peneii Sewell. They are an NFL announced Protector of the Year award this year. It's going to give to the best NFL offensive lineman. Finally, those guys are going to get some credit. My question to you, Jacob: should we already just name this the Peneii Sewell Award?
Let's wait until he wins the next 3 or 4, and then we'll just call it. Then we'll call it the Peneii Sewell.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be great. He's going to be one of those names that's consistently at the top, right? I mean, as soon as they announce it, you're thinking Peneii Sewell, Tristan Wirfs, Lane Johnson, those are the guys coming to mind right away that are going to be continuously contenders for the next few years at least.
I agree, and I'm just hoping that Penei's healthy all year, and this will be his award to lose,
right?
And if he's going to be stronger, you're just going to have those highlight reels. We just need to hand the ball off to him one time, and he could stiff arm some guy to the ground, and that'll get all the views.
That'll get enough votes. Yeah, right.
Like, all right, this is it. This is the guy's award. So hopefully he wins it. I hope that he does, and that would be awesome. All
How do
right.
you think Trent Williams feels about that? Like after the career that he's had and consistently being the best offensive lineman for like 10 years. And now once you start falling off, or, once you start aging a little bit and dropping a little bit, now they're going to get an award.
I know.
Because that dude would have had that in the bag for so long.
I know. It is too bad for a guy like that to not get the recognition that he probably deserved at the time. I mean, people around the league knew it, but have an award and get that because I know that there was talk about Penei. I know like Mina Kimes. I know the POD guys were pushing pretty hard for Penei Sewell for Offensive Player of the Year. That was never realistically going to happen, but this is an award we could pine for Penei Sewell that definitely is his to lose.
Well, and you know what? This will be something else that we can talk about how the Lions got robbed.
Oh God, please don't put that out there in the universe.
Well, you know how these things go.
Yeah, exactly. Made it be
Kevin O'Connell, Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I hope it's not like, okay, this guy outperformed. We know Penei Sewell's good, right? So like he probably doesn't deserve this award. Let's give it to some guy that's that overperformed.
We didn't think this guy was going to play well, and he did this year. So let's
Just like the MVP has turned into the best quarterback, they should just have a separate award for that. I don't want to do it for every position, but Penei, offensive lineman's not going to win any other awards that they're going to give. So I like that they've decided to do this.
Do you like that they're calling it the Protector of the Year?
No, I'm not really down with that, but I haven't.
That kind of just makes you think offensive tackle, right? Like not as much about the guards or centers, like,
Yeah. Do you have any other names in mind, or you got to think about it a little bit?
I haven't thought of any off the top of my head.
Yeah.
About you, what do you got?
No, not. I haven't thought about it enough, but
the
I have
Impenetrable Force Award.
That might have a different connotation. So, anyways, OTAs pictures dropped today. What do you want to focus on here first, or did you find any? I mean, I don't know if you had a chance to look through all of them today or not.
I didn't get a chance to look through all of them. I did see something that Jeremy posted on Pride of Detroit, like you were talking about when he had the slow down thing. Tesla doesn't look like he's actually doing like the team drills. I guess he may have been doing like positional stuff, but like the team stuff he was not a part of, or at least in the pictures it did not look like he was a part of. That's disappointing. That's what I really wanted to see. And I don't know what reason they would have for not having him out there. So
unless he's injured, he's got an injury,
right?
Or something
that's
like that.
Cause for concern. So
the the video that was released today, there was a short on YouTube that was released today. It might have been on Twitter too, but Dominic Lovett is featured in a couple of those. Tim Patrick caught some passes, a lot of JMO, and so that those guys are out there. And I don't know if you saw this, but there is a slow-mo video of Goff just dropping a dime bucket to Sam Laporta on the sideline. If you haven't seen it, Jacob, watch it.
I did not see that.
They slowed down this video, and it's a beautiful pass.
They released that earlier today, or was that recent?
It's on I think it's on the YouTube channel. Okay. I saw it. It might have been while you were out to dinner with your dad. Yeah. So you probably did sit and check it out there. But go to the YouTube channel, go to Twitter. It's on there. And I can't remember what the title of it. I think it's like Dime Season or something like that. But if you go, the Lions released it, so you can go there. It's a beautiful pass. Got me ready for football. No media access yet. So, they haven't been able to interview Dan Campbell. Media hasn't been there for these practices. So we don't know a lot of like, what are they doing with the offensive linemen? Who's lining up where? What is Tesla doing? Is he just on the sideline? We don't. We're inferring off one picture that Jeremy Reisman saw. So we don't know. I mean, it's just a picture. He could have been out there doing other stuff, and we just didn't see it. So tomorrow, I'm assuming they're supposed to get media access one day this week. I'm assuming that's got to be tomorrow. So hopefully tomorrow we'll get more information, which we can, have more to talk about next week when we come back on.
For sure.
That includes Dan Campbell speaking. So is there any questions that, if you were a beat writer that you want to ask Dan Campbell right now? Is there something that's a burning question that you have for him?
Not that I can think of right now. I mean, it's stuff that we've all, that we've talked about, and they're like fairly obvious ones about the direction of the offense and defense and where things are changing. But I don't have one right now. What about you? Have you been thinking about this?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, obviously, I want to talk a little about why Frank isn't there. If he'll share that, Frank Ragnow hasn't shown
Mhm.
up, or Amon Ra, just to see if there's like an injury there, or if it's just an excused absence. Uh, It's a little discouraging that those guys haven't shown up in pictures. We don't know for sure that they're not there. They just haven't been in any of the pictures. And you would assume if they're out there practicing, the media team would want to, put those players out there front and center. Maybe Frank had another surgery they're not disclosing yet. They probably don't have, I don't know when they have to disclose that type of stuff or if they do in the off season. So we'll see. That's what I would want to know is a little bit more about, the status of those guys. As far as everything else, man, I, I want the beat writers to be there to tell us more information about
Right.
and what they're seeing. That's what
I want
I need.
details. I want the actual details and stuff that's going on.
Yep. And so, Justin Rogers will have his be, Eric Slitt will be putting that out there, and then obviously Jeremy and all the other beat writers. So that'll be awesome. But the thing also that I saw in the pictures was, Hutch is obviously out there working. There's a picture released today of him going against a tackling dummy and him just trying to swat the ball out of the quarterback's hand. And so it just shows that he's out there. I mean, he's actively working.
Right.
And that's awesome and so encouraging.
Absolutely. I mean, he's not just there for show; he's there for work.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're going to limit him on one side or the not or other side this season or early in the season because of that leg to keep some pressure off the the broken leg.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see where he's lining up when we're out there. That'll be something that I'll be interested
good
that
point.
the beat writers to see. Now there's no contact, so it might be different. But once training camp gets lined up, I really want to see if they're bouncing Aidan all over the place or if they're keeping him on one side.
Right. Did you see that? We will be doing joint practices with the Dolphins and the
Yes.
Texans.
I forgot to put that in the outline, and I'm glad you brought that up. So I'm really excited about that because that means when we go to training camp, because it'll be one of those 2 weeks that we're gonna, hopefully it'll be one of those 2 weeks we're gonna be
Right.
able to see the other team. And have you ever been to a joint training?
No.
You only went last year when.
Right.
Probably
Just the last one was. Yep.
Yeah. So the first year that I went, we saw against the Giants, and it's awesome because it's like a mini. I mean, it's like a mini game. There is a lot more contact, but you got ones on ones, and then they got both fields going at the same time. So like on one, there's two fields out there. One, our offense number one's going against their offense number one, and on the other side, it's their offense one going against our defense one, and it's there's 7 players in and out, but you're getting to see some really good action, and they'll set up like last minute drives, the 2-minute warning, end of quarter end of half drills. So it's very
Well, and
fun
it's
to
highly
see.
competitive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I
Right.
mean,
They're fighting.
they're fighting, and
Literally.
at that time, right? It's getting to they've been in OTAs. I know mini camps aren't happening this year, mandatory mini camps because of the early Hall of Fame game, but they're going to be in this. The practice is very boring by this time, and it's nice to have some competition outside of your own guys. So it's not lion on lion. You're facing some other guy.
Right. Now, are you concerned at all that we have the multiple joint practices in addition to the extra preseason game?
Not
Do you
really.
think that just gets us in better shape for the season, or you think that's going to wear people down earlier?
I don't think so. It's a more control. I mean, injuries can happen anywhere, right? But it's a more controlled environment. There's contact, but it's not full contact. And so you could set up situation and get your offense. They can get 60 or 70 plays off in practice over the course of a few days. Whereas if they play a game, they're going to get 20, 30 plays. And then that situation may not even be what you want to practice. You're just talking 20 or 30 plays. Whereas if you get 60 or 70 plays off during a practice week of very meaningful reps, way more useful, and I think it'll get you, ready for a game quicker than playing a meaningless game, preseason game.
Right. So now, do you know, or like when you went to joint practices, did they seem to open the playbook up a little more? They were trying different things? Because a lot of times in the preseason, like when they're playing the actual preseason games, it becomes hand the ball off 3 times and punt.
Yeah, no.
You kind of have a very vanilla passing offense. You try different things with a running game, but that's why preseason football isn't as interesting for most fans anyway. Is just because the level of football is not, they're trying not to get hurt. You've obviously got the guys trying to fight for their positions on the team and everything, but you know what I mean. The playbook is dumbed down a lot.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, you're not giving away your secrets to the other team, but there's a lot more situational football that you can work on. And also, like, I want you to picture this. You might be playing a goal line set, right? Okay, so you're playing goal line or, red zone. Instead of like all the players like on the sideline like they are in a game, they are crowded right behind the offensive
Right.
defensive line, and they're all shouting and hooting and hollering. So it is a different atmosphere. It's a very competitive atmosphere. I mean, some of those guys are fighting for their job, not maybe necessarily the ones and twos, but when you're subbing in all those guys, some of those guys are fighting for their job and they're going to give it
Right.
120%. It's
Yes.
a totally different environment. It was fun when we went, when it was just line on line, especially with like when they were running like those Oklahoma drills or, those one-on-one drills. They will run a lot of passing stuff like that early on in the practice. They'll have like, our number one wide receiver just going against their corners and, fly route or whatever they're going to do, whatever they're going to run. You will see stuff like that early on, but then they're going to run 11 on 11s, and you will get to see stuff. And the players are a lot louder, like oohs and ahs when someone makes a big play.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's just a different atmosphere. I mean, I don't really know. I can't compare it to spring training, where if you ever been to spring training, it's a lot looser atmosphere. But the players aren't jawing at each other, but that it's kind of that looser atmosphere, but a very competitive atmosphere.
Interesting.
So if we get the opportunity to do what we did last year with sit where we're at, I'm hoping that we get to sit in that same section because we were like right in the middle of those two fields. We'd have prime view for both of the fields, and like
Yes.
you and I will just have to split up and watch one
Right.
field each other. I'm really you're gonna love it if you get to see that competitive atmosphere and just get to see not to mention the players we're gonna see, right? I mean, you see CJ Stroud for the Texans, Nico Collins, you're gonna see Tyreek for the Dolphins, and you're gonna
Right.
see marquee players, which that'll be fun in it of itself. You won't see them in the game, the preseason game that we're gonna play them, at the end of the week, but you will see them during the week, so it'll be fun, especially for your son that likes the Dolphins. Might be a really good app, and he might have an opportunity to get some autographs too, which would be cool. I don't know.
There's not going to be as many Dolphins fans there, so
Now, if he wears his Dolphins jersey, he could sit at the other end of the bench. Like
he might get beat up before we get in there.
Yeah, he can't be up where we're at. We'll put him down on the fence or something. But yeah, Dolphins players might notice that and give him a signature because they feel bad for him.
Yeah.
All right, but yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to put that in the outline and I didn't, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I had a feeling it was going to go that way, that we'd have. I thought for sure the Texans were going to have it because D'Amico Ryans. I thought for sure that he would want to do a joint practice.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping the Dolphins would sign up with that. Ironically, the Dolphins were the first one announced, and then they kind of confirmed the Texans are going to do it too. All right, quickly at the end here. Detroit sports, Tigers, first place. They're, best record in baseball right now by percentage points by like 1,000 or 1,000th of a percent right now over, I think, the Padres, or no, over the Phillies. Looking good, resurgence in Detroit basketball, playoff basketball. Kate Cunningham, amazing player, and obviously these Lions. So, I mean, in your opinion, in your lifetime of watching Detroit sports, is this the most electric time that you've ever seen in Detroit sports?
Not yet. So the thing is, I'll tell you when I think the best time for Detroit sports was since I've been alive and since I can remember anyway. I have the best time period between 2004 and 2008.
Okay.
I have the best stretch for Detroit sports. Which is ironic because this was during the time that pretty much every other Detroit team was on fire. We were all playing really well except for the Lions. The Lions were not doing so hot during that time period. But, so 2004, the Detroit Pistons win the NBA championship. They went to the finals, and in 2005, they didn't win. 2006, Tigers make a trip to the World Series. 2008, the Red Wings win the Stanley Cup Finals. I know this is not as big of news, but if you remember, we had the women's basketball team, the Detroit Shock. So they won the championship with Bill Laimbeer as their head coach. Like it was 2006, 2003, 2006, 2008. Obviously, the first one doesn't count for my time period saying, but outside of just how well the teams were performing and how great it was, Comerica hosted the All-Star game in 2005. The Super Bowl was in Detroit in January of 2006. So that's when I think was the best time for Detroit sports, was that, that like 4 or 5 year period. Now, I will say it feels different. Now it feels like the level of play, we're on that trajectory right now, but not enough yet.
I think Nick the Greek wants to. He's mad that we can't use bits, and that's probably something on Twitch that I'm not familiar with. So we'll have to get with Jeremy when we see him a couple weeks, so we can make Nick Nick the Greek happy, because he always will come with some interesting comments.
Right.
Monday when we were
good to hear from you, Nick. Right.
Yeah, exactly. The promised land of being monetized to the tune of $27 a month. That would be great. If I got $1 a month, I'd be happy this month. Okay, because it's all going out the other way. But
your opinion, though, like what recency bias makes you feel it's right now, right?
Well, I would not say right now. Because we have not made a finals. Once one of these teams makes a finals, I'm willing to change my tune a little bit. Lions were close, NFC Championship. We get to the Super Bowl. Recency bias is going to take over for everybody, and it's going to be now because we're all Lions fans. The uniqueness of the Lions making the Super Bowl, first time ever, it's going to win out. I like your time period, too. 2006 Tigers will always be a magical team for me. I will cry when I watch I watch a season recap of that. Meyer put out a DVD, and I watched that thing multiple times because every win that season meant so much to me. I'm even like, you can hear my voice. I'm kind of tearing up right now, anyways, about it. That I am such a huge Tigers fan, such a huge Lions fan that, when that happened, it was just out of nowhere. A lot of it's Jim Leland. Love that guy. Thought he just did right by the city. He was the right manager for the right time for that right team. The Pistons were awesome at that time. A team I love, the hard-nosed grit team, like we're seeing right now, a grit team. That was the going to work Pistons. What did they say about is this the going back to work or
back to work was the playoff?
Yeah,
thing,
right.
Back to work.
So I mean, it's a playoff that team. A play off those words. So. I got to go with you on that same time. I'm not a huge hockey guy, but I will tell you early 90s when Yzerman was on that team, that was a magical time. That was for the transition from the Dead Wings to, finals. I had some in high school. I had some really good friends that were hockey. So we bonded over that. But I would say you're right in that area. It's 2006 Tigers. They made the World Series. That was a sort of Verlander, right? Like, I know Tarek Skubal is an amazing pitcher, but Verlander is my Mount Rushmore of Detroit sports icons at the moment. And, Tarek may get there someday. Certainly his last start proved it.
Yeah.
I'm right there. But so once one of these teams starts making the finals or a big time run, we could get there. But this is an amazing time and sports, and and Detroit sports, and mostly because of what you said. That early 2000s didn't include the Lions, which a team you and I obviously love. We've dedicated all this time and to talk about this team that we love, and that in it itself makes it special for me. And the fact that all these other teams are coming up and in the same mindset, that grit mindset, um, that's what makes it, this time special to me. It feels different as a city than that time. It feels very congruent, like all these teams are growing together in the same fashion. I don't know how else to explain it, but that's what's different this time than it was in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I can't really speak on because back then I was young, so it's not like I was in the city and I wasn't going to games. I wasn't able to really do that like I am now. And now it just feels different in Detroit. The city as a whole and just everything, feels different. And it feels like we're on that path.
Yes.
I mean, all the teams now we have are competitive. Anybody can make a run. I mean, and it looks like we're set up for success in the near future with all of them. Like we could have a 4 or 5 year run like we did back then.
And the reason why we're set up like that is the leaders we have this team. AJ Hinch, genius manager. I mean, I mentioned Jim Leland earlier. AJ just seems like he is 3 steps ahead of everybody else. Jim Leland was like this emotional guru and knew how to get the best out of his players. The players loved him, and in turn, they rewarded him with very good play. AJ Hinch, I think, certainly has that characteristic, but his superpower to me is being able to manipulate these lineups, manipulate this roster, and just get the best matchup possible. And just when the other team thinks that they have him figured out, last year pitching chaos.
Yes.
Just did some amazing stuff. Now he had the right players to do that and an awesome bullpen to do that. But AJ Hinch's and you could say Bickerstaff too. He took the Pistons team that was down and out and turned them into a playoff team. And outside of some flopping and some questionable calls, we could have moved on to the next round. But getting to the playoffs and acting like we were belong in the playoffs was a great step for the Pistons.
Yes, tripling your win total is unheard of, and then just like the competitiveness in every single game. I mean, to be where we were last year as the Pistons, and then come back and do what we were able to do this year is really unheard of. And I'll be honest, like when we hired JB Bickerstaff, I was not that I wasn't on board. I was okay with giving him a shot, but I thought that this was like a stepping stone. I thought this was a placeholder. Yeah, and then finished second in Coach of the Year voting as well. So awesome time for the Pistons.
Which is crap. Which is
right,
as much a crap as Dan Campbell not getting Coach of the Year last year.
Yes.
You triple your win total and you don't get that. And by the way, your second best player is hurt while you're doing all that. Jaden Ivey being out.
Right.
It's unfathomable. Eric Schlitt put a tweet out. I don't know if you saw it earlier. He's like, "Is this the area in Detroit sports or the time period in Detroit sports that has the most blank check athletes?" And I'm not convinced of that because I think there was a time where like the Tigers roster had a lot of blank check athletes, and right now I probably only consider Tarek Skubal as the only blank check athlete, but the Lions have a ton of them. So
Who, just real quick before we go off of that, who comes to mind then when you're talking about the Tigers? You said there was a time when the Tigers might have had multiple? Because the only one that I can really think of would be Cabrera.
Well, Cabrera, Verlander,
Verlander?
Scherzer, those 3 guys, they should never let Scherzer run.
Well, I was just going to say, Scherzer, they just let him walk. So
well, they wasn't a blank check, right? They gave him money, and then they came out and said, we offered him this much money, and he said no. That was a terrible PR decision by the Tigers doing that. And it just, and then Scherzer had to play out the rest of the season with that in his head. Letting him go, basically ended that era. And I could understand at some point you gotta end it, but man, just him going on to win Cy Youngs and a World Series and seeing Justin Verlander win a World Series with another team before the Tigers, that still hurts me. especially the thought of him going into the Hall of Fame under another organization because he won a World Series with them. Miguel Cabrera obviously comes, those three for sure fall in that. I mean, you had David Price also at some point with that team. Rick Porcello, he was not a blank check athlete, but won a Cy Young,
after,
with another team after
right,
he left. During that time, you saw that ballpark, you probably had three Lions that were blank check athletes. You had Matthew Stafford, young Matthew Stafford, Calvin Johnson, and Ndamukong Suh. Those are probably the three blank check athletes. So you had, some
Good
sizable
point. Right,
athletes at that point. I did not follow basketball during the time, but that was pretty much a down period for the Pistons. So I doubt that we had anything.
Well, what year are you thinking? When Scherzer leave?
I would say, well, Scherzer left in like 14 or 15. So I'm talking like 11, probably, Stafford was a rookie in 9, so he's not a blank check athlete at that point. But by 11, 12, you're thinking, okay, he's our quarterback. We're going to write him a check. You had Kelvin by that time. So I'm talking like, say 11 through 15.
Says, yep. So Scherzer left. His last season for the Tigers was in 2014.
Yep.
So the Pistons were on 2014. If I'm not mistaken, that was probably the Andre Drummond years where Drummond was just the best player that we had. And everybody that we got, every scorer that we got around him was not a scorer or forgot how to score. I don't remember what year Blake Griffin came. That was a decent season, but that was 2018. Yeah. So they were definitely not any blank check Pistons coming through.
Yeah. So, and then Red Wings, I'm, way out of my league on that. So I can't speak to that. I'm, even now, DeBrincat probably comes to mind that you'd want to pay him. Obviously Larkin's on this team. I don't know if you could still consider him blank check, whatever, but I think
Patrick Kane.
Yeah, Patrick Kane for sure, but he just keeps going 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. It
Right.
appears, but the Lions right now, your blank check are, we gave Goff at that time a really high. I don't know if that's I don't know if I consider him blank check, but definitely Amon-Ra was a blank check athlete. Hutch is a blank check. Peneii Sewell's blank check. Who else would you consider? I mean, is Jahmyr Gibbs blank check material?
I don't know, because when you say blank check, I think that means like we absolutely cannot lose them, give them anything that they want. They have to,
Yeah.
And then in my head, I guess I'm thinking too practical with it, where I just don't see that for anybody. We almost did basically for Miguel Cabrera. That basically was, we're going to give you everything, and he deserved it. And for the majority of that contract, played up to it. Yeah, but I just don't. It's hard for me to think outside of like, okay, would we give them? Because if you're just going to say we're going to make them the number 1 overall paid player at their position.
Well, Kirby Joseph falls in that category then, because we just gave him number 1 salary. So
and then if you're thinking about that, then yes, I think Gibbs potentially could do that.
Right?
Will we? I don't know, but I mean that And
then does Brian Branch fall in that conversation? Because frankly, if it was up to him or Kirby, I'd probably give Brian Branch a little bit more. This was timing. Kirby had.
If we change the terminology from blank check to like, is this the time in Detroit sports where we have the most national all-stars, where we have the most national coverage, the most like all-star, Pro Bowl, those type of players? That I think may be true. I mean, Cade Cunningham is turning into a superstar. Scooble, Cy Young last year. I mean, looks like it this year as well. He's playing at that level. You have some promising young players. Max Clark, there's some people potentially in the Tigers organization as well. Red Wings, I mean, I can't really say anybody for sure on that. But then, you talk about the Lions, how many all-pros, Pro Bowlers and everything that we have on the team?
Yeah, Frank, does Frank,
in
Frank
Lions history, this is definitely, it's got to be the most that we've ever had on one team at a time.
I would say for the time period that we're cognizant of, maybe when
what other time period are you thinking of?
Well, in the 50s, I'm saying that's
Jason.
way out of. Well, I'm just saying we can't.
Don't.
If you're gonna say all time, I'm saying in our time period that we've been fans. Me from '90s on, you from 2000s on. This is definitely the best, obviously the best Lions roster, top to bottom, that we've had. Now we've had, I would say Calvin Johnson, best wide receiver we've ever had. I will say Barry Sanders is the best running back we've had. So we're not, we've had higher tier players. I don't even know if tier is the right word, but higher caliber player than, Barry Sanders over anybody on this team right now. Calvin Johnson over any wide receiver that we have on this team right now. But as far as a collection as a whole and just as a team, even our mid-range, mid-level players are going to be like star players on any other Lions roster. They'd be like, oh, we're going to hang our hat on Alex Anzalone, hang our hat on, whoever else, just all the things we were just starved for talent at that time. Yes, there's no doubt that the Lions headline this city's marquee players, but the Tigers could get there, especially these young players. Like you said, we got players coming up in the pipeline. Got young players on this roster. Kerry Carpenter could develop, and if just something is,
Riley
Torkelson,
Green, Torque, yeah.
Well, Torkelson is almost on pace for 40 home runs this year.
Yeah,
we were third through the season. He's got 13 or 14 now. You multiply that by 3. He's in the 40 home run ball. That's. I know it's not Aaron Judge, but it's pretty darn good and way more than expected. So,
yes.
Those are just young guys. I mean, remember, Torque is like 24 years old. He seems like he's been on this team forever. We brought him up way too early because, frankly, we had no other options in the Tigers. So, regardless if we could argue about what the definition of blank check time, I think you're right. Is this the time period where we have the most marquee athletes up and down all 4 sports teams? Yeah, I would say yes.
Yeah, right. It feels like it.
Yeah, and it's and I don't think it's just a matter of like more coverage. There's just more social media and all that stuff like that. No, we have like dynamic players. Kate Cunningham is a dynamic player, and he's only going to get better.
Right.
We get him some
all NBA this year.
Yeah, we get Ivy out there. Oh my gosh, giving him someone to play off of, it's going to be great.
Excited about the prospects for next year already.
I know.
Meanwhile, NBA Finals not even started yet.
I know. All right, man. That was a good conversation. So, anything else you want to talk about before we head out?
Man. Nope. I'm ready. I mean, we're recording really late into the week, so I mean, it'll only be today is Thursday, so it's only going to be a few more days. We're recording again on Monday. We'll have a little bit more insight on OTAs. Maybe there'll be some other news stories to talk about, but
always have some. We got to bring back on Monday. We got to bring back the Blitz. Do you think we should do that?
I actually, I had been thinking about that. I've got a couple tricks, couple things up my sleeve to ask you, so I'm ready for it.
Okay. I think this season, so anybody that was with us last summer during this, we don't really do it during the season because there's just so much to talk about, but we'll do a fast-paced trivia questions section. Last year we used to do both of us in the same episode. I think this year we're going to trade on and off weeks. So maybe Jacob will ask if he's already got tricks up his sleeve. I'm going to task you with 5 questions for me on Monday when we record. You want to do Monday?
Yep. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Let's get back on our Monday kick. We'll have a lot more information about OTAs. The beat writers will be out there. Dan Campbell's going to speak. So that'll be awesome. And then the following week, which is going to be, I think, June 9th, we're going to record. Jeremy Reisman's going to join us. And, we got something fun up our sleeves on this one. We're going to just do something a little different with him. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I know he's excited for it. And we're excited to have him back.
Absolutely.
All right. For Jacob, flag football extraordinaire. Jason, cornhole extraordinaire. Let's go Lions.